So, growing up I had four things I love: Power Rangers, Pokemon, Digimon, and Yu-Gi-Oh! And in 2002, 2003, like every other grade school kid at the time, I was obsessed with the card-slinging series Yu-Gi-Oh! I'd watch every weekday afternoon and Saturday morning, and I can't even remember my mom getting one of the collectible TV guides for me and my fellow obsessed siblings at the time. I can even remember vividly the first episode when every late millennial / zoomer's first waifu dark magician girl first appeared, a simping I still carry to this day. Ladies and gentlemen, my name is Tanner, this is Scarlet Writer's Geek Corner, and today we're going to be taking a look at Yu-Gi-Oh's first official chapter, Puzzle of the Gods. Puzzle of the Gods is a 50-page one-shot that was published in 1996's 42nd issue of Weekly Shonen Jump on September 14th of that year. Yu-Gi-Oh! Was created, illustrated, and written by Kazuki Takahashi, who, much like our boy Yugi, is an avid lover of all things games. The series ran for almost 8 years and capped out at a total of 343 chapters over the course of 9 story arcs. The very first page contains a historical exposition of ancient Egypt and Yu-Gi-Oh's lore. There is a history of games. Game history is interwoven with human history, starting in the Egyptian Empire 5,000 years ago. Ancient games foretold the future for citizens and kings. As games were played, fate was decided in magical ceremonies. These were called the Shadow Games. The story begins at Domino City High School, where we see our main protagonist Yugi invited to play basketball by some of his fellow classmates during their free period. He politely declines, knowing that it's just a nicety on their part because, well, he isn't very athletically inclined, and any team that would be unfortunate to get him would just lose. Yugi in fact prefers to spend his time playing with games or puzzles, though unfortunately he's always usually doing them by himself as he doesn't have many close friends. He then decides to use this time to work on something that's been a little bit of a long-winded personal project of his. He pulls out an old golden box with Egyptian hieroglyphs on it. Then, speaking in soliloquy, he states a riddle. Inside the box is something you see but haven't seen before. Though before he can get to work on it, his box is snatched out of his hands by a fellow classmate, Honda. He and his friend Genochi routinely pick on Yugi, calling him a weirdo for talking to himself out loud. Genochi calling him effeminate for getting so worked up over a stupid box. He then tells Yugi he intends to make a man out of him, and for his first lesson in the Katsuya School of Toxic Masculinity, he tells Yugi to hit him with everything he's got. Yugi gets visibly frustrated and loudly proclaims his aversion to violence and fighting, much to Genochi's annoyance. He gets curious as to what's inside and sneaks a look before throwing the box back to Honda, completely disinterested by its contents. However, it's intercepted by Anzu, a childhood friend of Yugi's that frequently sticks up for him. Honda and Genochi freak and bail, Anzu giving Yugi back his box, telling him that he really needs to toughen up. She had originally accepted an invite to go out to court to play basketball, but quit when she saw that the guys in their class were just using it as a ruse to look up the girls' skirts. Yugi getting excited about such a prospect, obviously regretting that he didn't go. Anzu asks him what's up with the box, and he opens it to show her, revealing the solid gold pieces of a three-dimensional puzzle. To which longtime Yu-Gi-Oh! Fans know that they're the pieces to the Millennium Puzzle. Yugi's family runs a game shop, so they have all sorts of diverse games from all over the world, and he just so happened to find this particular one on a dusty shelf and took it when he was 8 years old. Yugi has a particular attachment to this one because he claims it's a memento from his grandfather. This shocks Anzu as she wasn't aware Grandpa Moto had passed away. Her statement of condolences doesn't even seem to register with Yugi as he goes on about how it was found in an Egyptian ruin on an archaeological dig. He points out the hieroglyphs on the box and excitingly and half-jokingly claims that whoever manages to finish the puzzle will be granted one wish. However, Yugi has spent the last 8 years working on it and hasn't gotten very far due to its advanced difficulty. Anzu encourages him and tells him to keep at it and carelessly asks him what his one wish would be, to which he replies it's a secret. Out in the hall, Genochi and Honda run into Yugioh, the hall monitor and trainer of the school's disciplinary group, who overhears Genochi griping about Anzu calling them bullies. As you can imagine, Yugioh's demeanor and stature strike fear to the hearts of everyone in the school, including the teachers, unfortunately, hence why I'd imagine he'd be given the title he has within the school. Yugioh casually intimidates them, simply warning them that picking on other students is wrong. Genochi's naturally ready and willing to throw down until Honda stops him from getting absolutely destroyed. After Yugioh passes through, Genochi screams after him, saying that he'll be the one to take him down a peg one day. Honda declares how boring and dull life currently is, to which Genochi responds by showing him a piece he swiped from Yugi's box. Then, just to be an asshole, throws into the school's athletic pool just to screw with Yugi so that he can never complete the puzzle. Genochi once again referring to Yugi as acting like a girl and how it pisses him off. That afternoon after school ends, Yugi is on his way home, who then is stopped by Yugioh, who asks him if he's being bullied in his class. Yugi claims no such thing is happening, to which Ushio assures Yugi that he'll no longer have to worry about it because he's willing to be his personal bodyguard. Yugi again reiterates that nothing is going on and quickly retreats away to get home, freaked out by the whole exchange, Ushio thinking to himself that he's found a nice mark. Yugi arrives at home to his family's game shop where he meets Anzu, who unexpectedly drops by to play games with him, Anzu obviously feeling some sort of pity for Yugi, believing his grandpa died. Well, as she finds out in the next few seconds, Sugoroku Moto, owner of the Kame game store, is still alive and kicking, and quite the lecherous old freak, commenting on Anzu's chest size and how it's grown since the last time he's seen her.
FBI, open up!
Yugi attempts to take Anzu up to his room, and Sugoroku asks him if he's still working on the Millennium Puzzle. He then claims that not only is it the artifact beyond any sort of human comprehension, it also has a dark and ominous history attached to its legacy. The Millennium Puzzle was uncovered sometime in the early 20th century by an archaeology team from Britain. It was found in the Pharaoh's crypt in the Valley of Kings, and soon after, all those involved with the expedition died mysterious, unnatural deaths. The last remaining one then uttering a phrase in his dying breath, "the Shadow Games." Yugi thinks the Shadow Games sound cool. And Sugoroku points to the hieroglyphs and claims that the translation states that one who solves me shall gain the powers and the knowledge of darkness, to which Yugi excitedly reiterates his determination to finish it, thinking that it really will grant his wishes, at the dismay of his grandpa, who just wants to hawk it for cash. Anyway, Yugi gets a renewed determination to work on the puzzle that night, and he only manages to get stuck on the same point that he always does. The following morning, during the lunch period, he's visited by Ushio, who takes him out behind the school to show him a little project he's worked on. That project being Jinochi and Honda having the ever-loving kicked out of them, much to Yugi's shock and horror, made worse by the fact that both are under the assumption that Yugi had it done, Yugi desperately trying to tell them that that isn't what happened. Ushio, being the clear sadistic bastard that he is, starts kicking Jinochi in his chest, only for Yugi to throw himself in front of him, pleading for him to stop. Ushio reminds Yugi that it was he who picked on him every day and invites him to join in, beating them for revenge. Yugi screams at him, refusing to let hit his friends, much to Jinochi's shock. Ushio doesn't really care about all the niceties and now claims that for his special service, Yugi owes him 200,000 yen. And with that, he can join Ushio in beating them daily for kicks. Yugi tells him not to hurt them anymore and that if he has to beat up on anyone, to beat up on him. And Ushio is more than happy to oblige and proceeds to give Yugi the beating of his life. Jinochi at this point is in complete shock and awe at Yugi's bravery to defend them, despite everything they've put him through. As Yugi's beating intensifies, he thinks about the one wish he made on the puzzle. That wish being simply to have friends. True friends that could count on him, given that he's never had that before. Ushio finishes up and tells Yugi that he expects to be paid the 200,000 yen tomorrow, and that if he doesn't, they both get to play with Ushio's knife. Yeah, Ushio. Kind of a piece of shit. Yugi, of course, is completely demoralized, not only physically but mentally, knowing that he couldn't touch Ushio in a million years, and that paying him off was all he could really do at this point. That night back at his room, Yugi goes through his savings and, of course, like most kids his age, doesn't have the 200,000 yen to pay off the bully. While he sits at his desk distraught over the situation with Ushio, he's able to somehow fit more and more of the pieces of the Millennium Puzzle in place, almost as if it comes naturally to him. And he manages to assemble it to where only one piece remains. But when he goes for said piece, it isn't there. It just so happens to be the piece Jinochi threw into the school's pool. He frantically searches his room, but to no avail. The final piece is gone, realizing that he's never going to get his wish. Sugoroku enters his room and sees that he's completed 99% of the puzzle, and he's amazed at his grandson's talent, but Yugi tells him that he couldn't finish the puzzle, having lost the final piece. His grandfather then encourages him and says that for someone who's spent 8 years of his life trying to assemble the puzzle, he should really just have more faith, and that his wish will be granted, and he has in his hand the final piece of the puzzle. Suffice to say, Yugi is more than overjoyed and is thankful to his grandfather for finding it, to which the latter reveals it wasn't him that found it, but a young friend of his who came by soaked from head to toe. This aspect of this young man confused Sugoroku because it wasn't raining outside, and he gave Sugoroku the final piece. That person being, of course, Jinochi, who was moved by Yugi's guts to stand up to Ushio that day. He tells Yugi's grandfather not to mention anything about him to Yugi, but informs him of the situation of the 200,000 yen, which is then placed in Yugi's book bag. So now, Yugi can cancel his knife playdate with Ushio. The two then bid each other a good night, and Yugi inserts the final piece of the Millennium Puzzle, Sengoku reciting a legend from the Book of the Dead that the one who solves the puzzle inherits the Shadow Games. He becomes the guardian of right and passes judgment on evil. He then suggests that Ushio might be the one who's really in trouble at this point. Yugi inserts the final piece and the puzzle begins to glow, and it fires a beam directly into Yugi's forehead, causing the Eye of Anubis to appear on him. The next panel then skips to a few hours later. It's midnight, and we see Ushio at the school's courtyard, apparently having been called out by Yugi himself to meet him there. Yugi then soon reveals himself, carrying a new confident yet darker demeanor and sporting a new outfit. Ushio doesn't care too much for Yugi's choice in wardrobe and just demands the cash payout. Yugi pulls out a stack of bills having double the amount to 400,000 yen, much to Ushio's glee, but he propositions that they play a game. But not just any game, a shadow game. For this particular shadow game, Yugi asks Ushio for his knife, being that they'll need it as a tool. Ushio wondering what kind of game they could possibly play with bills and a knife, and Yugi declares that the rules are as follows. Each player takes turns putting the stack of bills on top of their hand. During their turn, they'll use said knife to stab the stack, keeping the bills the knife grabs while not stabbing themselves, and they each must take more than one bill at a time. The game ends when there are no more bills, and the goal is to take as much money as possible, controlling their greed while not mutilating themselves. If a player cheats by trying to grab the money by hand or quit before the game ends, they forfeit any money they've collected thus far. The loser will then be subject to a penalty game. Ushio is finding it, of course, hard to believe that this is actually little Yugi, but he agrees to the terms of the game. They settle who goes first with the game of Rochambeau, to which Yugi wins. He then takes the first thrust, and he doesn't even manage to get 10 of the bills. Ushio goes next, and his nerves begin to waver a bit, having to control his own greed. He manages to snag 100,000 yen on his first go, and his ego gets a boost, claiming he really should have stabbed harder. After a few turns back and forth, the game reaches its climax, and Ushio on one of his turns has a smaller stack on top of his hand. However, for some reason his arm intends to use more strength than his brain is intending. His right arm intends to thrust with everything he's got, which sends Ushio into a panic. Yugi comments that the shadow game shows the player's true nature, in this case Ushio's greed overtaking his logic. Ushio decides that the way to win is through a loophole. He'll just take the knife and kill Yugi, sparing his hand and taking all 400,000 yen. Yugi easily evades, and due to Ushio's inability to play fair, declares Ushio the loser. The Eye of Anubis appears on his forehead, and Ushio is able to see it. Yugi claims that it's only able to be seen by those who trespass on his soul, those that hurt his friends or try and steal from him. He declares Ushio to be subject to a penalty game. Yugi then casts a spell on Ushio, Greed, the illusion of avarice, and this causes Ushio to see nothing but money. In fact, he literally thinks it's raining down on him. In fact, Ushio is absolutely overjoyed to be surrounded by so much cash. And the new Yugi wonders if it's really a hell or a dream come true that he's subjected up to. But the new Yugi's satisfied because he was able to recover all his money. A few hours later, Ushio is still there, crawling around in leaves and trash, happy as can be, much to the shock and horror of the other students and faculty. Yugi, of course, can't remember what happened after finishing the puzzle, so he remembers nothing of his game with Ushio. He meets Jinochi in the hall, and Jinochi clearly is happy that Yugi was able to complete his treasure. He then tells Yugi that he has a treasure himself and throws a riddle at him. It's something you can show, but can't see. Yugi ponders it for a second, and Jinochi answers it by revealing that the answer is friendship. So going forward, Jinochi and Yugi are friends. Jinochi dropping his pseudo-macho shtick towards Yugi and accepting him for who he is. Though old habits tend to die hard, as Jinochi gets embarrassed and takes off running to class, even leaving a shoe behind. Yugi's next official bro act being returning his shoe, thus ending Yu-Gi-Oh's first chapter. But the Yu-Gi-Oh manga is quite different than the story from the anime everybody has seen. No mention of duel monsters until about the 9th chapter, and the game doesn't become a focal point of the series until chapter 60 at the beginning of the Duelist Kingdom arc. Now, as those who have watched the anime are aware, and I guess I should give a spoiler warning here, the dark persona that comes over Yugi is actually the disembodied soul of an ancient Egyptian pharaoh by the name of Atem. Now, more than likely Takahashi had differing ideas when he was writing the early stages of the manga, or at least that's the impression I get. It feels as though it was supposed to be a darker side of Yugi's persona, one that was a hidden side of him. I could be entirely wrong, but I wasn't in Takahashi's head in 1996, unfortunately. But as for the chapter itself, it tells a complete story and sets up what will be the status quo for a good chunk of the story's early arcs. It introduces our characters and initiates early stages of development in one of them, and gives us what would be, and I know I'm going to get ratioed for this, one of the greatest bromances in manga, in my opinion. One more thing I want to touch on is the art style Takahashi uses in the first few chapters. It's obviously quite different than the style used a bit later, but this is quite common for most mangaka. Though one thing I will note here is that base Yugi's considerably shorter than when Takahashi solidifies his art style. In my personal headcanon, I really just chalk it up to a long-needed growth spurt in Yugi's adolescent development. I mean, the guy is in high school after all. My friends, this is not the last time I'll be delving into the pages of Yu-Gi-Oh! I will be doing this and many other series in the times to come, so stay tuned for more. Hey, what is up everybody? Hope you enjoyed the video. If you did, let's get the conversation rolling and start dropping those comments in the comment section thingy below. Also, please proceed to drop me a like. It would greatly be appreciated. And hit that subscribe button, as I do have more content coming in the future. And hit that bell icon for notifications, because YouTube's got a nasty habit of, doing what they do. Also, you can follow me on the social media handles I've got listed right here. And, oh, what is that? Is that a Twitch channel? My name is Tanner, this is Scarlet, Geek Corner, and I will see you guys next time.